Hi guys, Extra Talk. We're going to talk about Benfica, our next Champions League opponent. We have a very special guest. Very delighted to have you on the channel, Adrian from Rabona TV. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here, excited to speak about Benfica. But as we were saying earlier, just before recording, not so excited to watch, but we'll get into that. I'll explain why.
Absolutely, we will. And of course, everyone knows Sahbi. Welcome, Sahbi.
What's up? What's up, Juan? How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Adrian, the thing we do, right, before we start digging into the topic itself, we want to know a little bit more about you, and I will also tell the viewers you have an amazing channel on YouTube talking about a lot of things surrounding football. I mean, I'm wondering what you guys don't do, really, because you guys cover everything, basically. No, it's a really nice channel. You guys are very good at it. Tell us a little bit about your background, first of all, how you became a Benfica fan. That's always nice to hear. And how you came up with the idea and how the channel is going for you.
Yeah, so I started the channel back in 2016, and basically I'm Portuguese Canadian. My parents are from Portugal, and I wanted an outlet to be able to speak about football because in Canada, I grew up in a really small town where there wasn't even other Portuguese families. There were some that were close, about an hour away, but in my day-to-day life, it was basically all, the stereotypical things of Canada. It was all people playing hockey, people playing American football, but not the kind of football that I like to enjoy. So that's sort of been one of the things that I had to put up with throughout my entire life. So when I got older, I went to school for broadcast journalism. So I studied, basically audio video journalism. And then I ended up getting a job at another YouTube channel. I'm doing a speed run of my life here, so I'll keep it short. Yeah. I got a job at another YouTube channel called Watch Mojo in Montreal, Canada. And I was basically a video editor there. I did script writing. I did all sorts of things, pretty much everything under the sun that involves running a YouTube channel. But what I didn't do was the thing that I was passionate about, which was covering football. So at one point I thought, why don't I just start my own channel? I know football at least a little bit. I will not say I'm some, mega brain when it comes to football or anything like that, but I know football. I know YouTube. I know video editing. I can do a little bit of hosting, a little bit of voiceover work. Why don't I just give it a shot? And I've always had a broader interest in the entire game. Like, yes, I am a Benfica supporter, but I like watching the Premier League. I like watching La Liga, a little Serie A, a little bit of everything. So that's why I didn't take such a concentrated attempt at making a YouTube channel where it was just Benfica. In hindsight, that would have been much easier because I feel like I'm kind of spread thin at times, but that's basically where it came from. It came from my profession, I guess you could call it, in broadcast journalism and YouTube, and sort of making a hybrid of that and what I'm passionate about, which is football. And here we are. Thankfully, it's worked out, and I've been able to make a living of it so far. Yeah, that's where we're at. I might have missed some of your questions in there, but
it's wonderful. Great story. For the viewers that are interested, I mean, I will recommend them to have a look at your channel. I think they will love it, especially if you like football. So we'll put it in the description below for sure. One question I do have, though, we talked a couple of times with different, like fans and stuff like that. And one of the recurring themes you see is that they were brought up with football from their family and they became the same, let's say Dortmund fan or other teams. Did you have a little bit of the same as well?
Actually, to be honest with you, my family, well, my dad always followed football. He never really had a team because where my parents came from in Portugal is São Miguel. Those are the Azorian Islands in the middle of the Atlantic. And so my dad, he left Portugal when he was very young. And once he came over to Canada, there wasn't really a way for him to watch Portuguese football. I think there was a way to listen to it on the radio, but it was like, you'd have to go downtown to a Portuguese guy who happened to own a radio and whatever. It was very difficult. So he never really followed football. But funnily enough, my grandparents are actually sporting fans. So how I became a Benfica supporter, which I'm sure you're asking here now, is what some of my first memories of watching football were Euro 2000. And that Portuguese side that had a really good run. And I just remember watching Nuno Gomes and being like, that's it. This is the guy for me. And he was sort of my gateway into watching football regularly and into Benfica as well. Now, of course, he did leave to Fiorentina at that time, but he did come back 2 years later. So he was sort of my gateway. And a lot of people in my generation, I think he was sort of the gateway into Benfica for them as well, because he was such an iconic player for Benfica and Portugal. And just from there, for better or for worse lately, but there's been a lot of really good moments as well since following Benfica. that's how it started for me. And I had a nice little rivalry with my grandparents for a while, but now they'll be happy because Sporting's back on top and Benfica is the one that's suffering.
We're going to talk about that. Before we start, again, another question. We're talking about the draw now, so I'm going to move to the draw. We had a very, very peculiar draw this season. So the first one didn't count. We went to the other one. I will start with Sahbi. I want his initial reaction. So from Ajax side, we drew Inter first, and then we drew Benfica. Your thoughts about this? And Adrian, I will go to you. You guys first drew Madrid, and then, of course, Ajax. And I have a question from a fan, because I also have a couple of questions from our followers and stuff about Benfica, but I have a special one about the draw as well. So Sahbi, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I was quite disappointed when we drew first time against Inter. I mean, we all know the history of Ajax and Italian football. Always bad results. So I was a bit disappointed, especially playing against Inter, who play more as a 3-5-2 formation, which doesn't suit us a lot. Well, apparently against Sporting it did, but against Inter, I could see some problems out there. So when I saw the second draw against Benfica, I might say sorry, Adrian, to say so, but I was quite relieved because I mean there were some clubs which I would have loved to draw. I mean Lille or Red Bull Salzburg were one of the opponents which I would rather have instead of Benfica. But yeah, I'm quite relieved. So yeah, happy.
All right. So Adrian, one of the questions that I asked you already, so I'm going to put on top of it one of our viewers who asked you, so you guys had Real Madrid first, of course, now Ajax. How do you feel about it? And what were the reactions of the Benfica fans? I'm sure you can say something about that as well.
I feel like when we drew Real Madrid, especially with the kind of form that Real Madrid were in at the time, this was prior to Benzema getting injured recently. They were flying. They were doing really well under Carlo Ancelotti. And I think, you know, this was sort of December was when things started to get really bad for us. This is when Jorge Jesus got sacked in December. And so basically whoever we drew, if it wasn't Lille or if it wasn't a Salzburg or something like that, we would have felt like we don't really stand a chance just based on how things were going. So when we got Real Madrid, it was basically we were resigned to defeat already. Then when we got Ajax, I think there was some optimism at first, but then people said, wait a minute, we saw what they did to Sporting in Sporting's own stadium, the defending champions in Portugal, and it seemed that we haven't been able to beat the last two attempts as well. So I think that a lot of us, and as time has progressed, you know, we've been keeping an eye on how well Ajax have been doing, all the 5-0, 9-0, whatever, you know, keep running up the score. Your goal difference is what, plus 64 or something in the Eredivisie. So yeah, I mean, a lot of us are looking at it now like, is this any better than Real Madrid? I doubt it based on what we've seen against Sporting and what you guys are doing domestically in the Netherlands. So a lot of us are sort of, I think there's some that feel like, no, there's always a chance. There's always a chance. And there is, you know, anything can happen. Anything can happen, right? But if we're being realistic, do we think that we'll beat Ajax based on how we've done this season and all of the things that have happened to the club this season? No, definitely not.
Perfect. You're aligning this one for me. So we're going forward. Let's talk about Benfica. And before we touch upon this season specifically, one question that we had as well, and it's a very interesting one because, of course, we played against each other in 2018-19. That was one of the best seasons we had in the Champions League recently in the group stage. So if we compare the Benfica now to the Benfica in 18-19, what would you say is the biggest difference? And one person is asking, Agi 2033, he's asking, did Benfica get better?
So when I think of when the last time we faced you guys, we were also going through a bit of a weird moment because that was leading into the second half of the season, which was just remarkable for Benfica. The first half of the season, including the Champions League group stage, was not good. We sacked our manager in early January and we brought in Bruno Lage, the guy who's now at Wolves, if you guys have been following the Premier League at all. And he turned our season around completely. We even had some crazy scores. We beat a team 10-0 in that second half of the season. And I think we were down 7 points in the league and we ended up winning the league. That was Juan Felix's breakout season, playing alongside Haris Seferovic. We were scoring goals for fun. We were playing really good attacking football. And so we ended up winning the league that season and we looked really good. But as is the common theme.
Sorry, that was, by the way, your last the last time you guys won the title.
Yes,
right?
exactly. So it's all been sort of downhill from there, because as is sort of the trend with Benfica, it's a good season and then the players sort of turn on the manager and then there's a downward spiral. And so we've been going down and down since then. Things started to pick up a little bit under Jorge Jesus, but are we better or worse than we were from the last time we faced you guys? I would say sort of the same, I guess, because we were in a similar situation where a manager was on the way out. Now we have just a caretaker manager and a Verissimo. And so I would say we're the same, if not maybe worse than we were last time, just because results and good results, when they come, are very, very difficult. We have to grind out results. For example, this past weekend, we played against Santa Clara, a team that is, sort of mid-table-ish. Sometimes they go on a good run. They almost made the Conference League, but they were missing two of their best players. And it's a team that, if you look at our history, our pedigree, our differences in financial situations between the two clubs, we should be beating them every single time. But with two players out for them that are integral players, we struggled, and it required a penalty at home in order to get back into the game, and then a good finish from Darwin Nunez.
Yeah.
So we'll speak about him later, I'm sure.
But Adrian, just a question. What is the reason that Benfica performs better in away games than at home games? Normally, in the recent years, it was always the other way around.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think that Benfica has been in such a strange situation. It's been very hostile. You want me to get right into it, get into the politics and everything?
Let's talk about it, about this season specifically. So what we know is Jesus came in 2020. He came in the summer, I think. This year, he continued, coaching the team. So what happened? What's the situation with Pizzi and Almeida? So maybe you can touch upon these points.
Okay. So I think the first thing that's worth mentioning is how Benfica, you guys probably saw it in the news, our former president, Luis Felipe Vieira, was arrested for allegations of money laundering and corruption and all of these terrible things. So for the last few years, the fan base has sort of been divided between people who support Vieira and what he's done for Benfica. There has been some good things over the last decade with our youth academy and, selling players at a very high price, thanks to Jorge Mendes, etc. But there's also been a lot of times where it's like, well, where's the money going? And is it really being reinvested in the right way back into the club? So that sort of came to a head in the last year or so, where Vieira was arrested and he was finally booted out as our president, and Rui Costa took over. So there's already sort of a destabilization in the club because of that, because it's hard to perform when there's all this legal issues going on behind the scenes. Now, as far as Pizzi and Andre Almeida, this person clearly knows Benfica a little bit, because those are two players who have always been linked to causing issues in the dressing room and sort of having the power to get managers fired. Pizzi has recently been sent on loan to Istanbul, Başakşehir. Whereas Andre Almeida is still around. He's still our club captain, but there's a lot of rumors, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And it came up when Rui Vitória got fired. It came up when Bruno Lage got fired, and it came up again when Jorge Jesus got fired. There's rumors that Pizzi, Andre Almeida, and Rafa, they call them sort of the Portuguese cartel, sort of run the dressing room, and they hold enough sway that if they don't like a manager, they can influence the other players to not really play for the manager until he gets sacked. Someone new comes in, they play well until they don't like that manager anymore. Then they turn on him, and the cycle has sort of repeated itself from Rui Vitória, Bruno Lage, Jorge Jesus. So that's what's sort of been going on at Benfica lately. And that came to a head again in December when Jorge Jesus ultimately got fired. It's almost like a movie you've seen already. You start to see the same sort of things happening where results start to go down. You start to hear rumors about, Pizzi's unhappy. Pizzi's on the bench. He's not getting played as much. Andre Almeida, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as expecting more out of Jorge Jesus, I think that a lot of us thought, you think back to what he did with the club before. You look at what he did with Flamengo in the Copa Libertadores, winning down in Brazil and South America, prestigious title, doing very well there. Then he comes back to Benfica, and you're thinking he's finally won that continental trophy. He finally got it over the line, so to speak, in a continental final, which he failed to do twice with us, unfortunately. So we thought that it was going to work out better. But I think that since he did come in during all of these legal issues with our president, and it was just not a good atmosphere for it to be successful. And of course, he's not completely infallible. There's things that he could have done better as well. Right. But the whole environment around the club is really just not conducive or easy for a manager to be successful when you couple the environment with the players that are seemingly causing issues in the dressing room as well.
Yeah.
And he was flirting with Flamengo as well, to go back.
Yeah, it's looking like he might end up going back there, which I wouldn't be surprised. And I say do it because Portuguese managers do very well in Brazil. Apparently, Abel Ferreira won the Copa Libertadores as well with Palmeiras. So hey, go back there. He enjoyed life there.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, so we're moving now to the playing style of Benfica this year, and we have to make a distinction, of course, between the first half of the year, basically, up to Jorge Jesus, who's been the coach, and now Nelson, help me with this one.
Verissimo.
Yes. Who is now the interim. Basically, he was the assistant, and now he's taking over until the end of the season. He has done it a couple of times before as well. So can you tell us a little bit about the playing style? I will ask you both this, by the way, but Adrian, you take it first. And do you see changes throughout the season?
Definitely. Yeah. Under Jorge Jesus, he was really sticking with a 3-4-3, which I think is actually the best way for us to play, given the players that we have. Someone you guys are very familiar with, Jan Vertonghen, of course, maybe arrived at Benfica 4 or 5 years too late. Same with Nicolas Otamendi. So we have these older defenders that are a little bit slow. And when we play with a back four, especially with the right back issue that we've had for years since Nelson Semedo left to Barcelona in 2017, I believe it was 2016-17. I think that the back three was perfect for us because we had that defensive solidity, and Lucas Verissimo, not our manager, a defender that we had, very, very good defender, was getting caps with Brazil. He's out for the season as well. So if we had him in a back four, I would feel better, but we don't. So I think that we should play with the back three. And that's what we at least had under Jorge Jesus, was a little bit of defensive solidity. Now under Verissimo, he wants to play either a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 with a double pivot. And it's been okay. It hasn't been great, in my opinion, because, like I said, I just feel like we're too easy to expose with these fast attackers that just expose our right side of defense. That's a big weakness for us, which I'm sure we'll also get to later. But yeah, as far as the attack, it just feels like there isn't much direction anymore. It really feels like what you would expect under a caretaker manager. It's just sort of a 4-4-2 and hope that we can abuse the pace of either Rafa or Darwin in the attack, because that's basically all we've got. And I don't know if you guys saw Benfica Barcelona, but that's what we used to great effect was the pace of Darwin Nunez down the left. But right now it just feels a little bit directionless. And I feel very, very nervous in defense because it just feels slow and like we're using older players. And I mean, the only other right back that we use is either Diogo Gonçalves, who is, another one of those wingers turned right back, and another one in Valentino Lozado, who is another winger turned right back. So it's a really problem area. And I think that if we go with the 4-4-2 against Ajax, it could get ugly, in my opinion.
They will face our captain. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something. What's your take? Let me ask you. What's your take? What have you seen? Because you follow a little bit Benfica as well. What did you see?
Yeah, I follow them. Yeah, I mean, as Adrian said, with Juan Jesus, they really played that 3-4-3 system, which really suits a type of player like Grimaldo, who likes to have that freedom to attack on the left side. So they performed quite well, especially at the start of the season, when they also won from PSV during the Champions League preliminary round. So they did well. They started the 3-4-3 system at the end of last season, if I remember it correctly, and they continued that spell at the start of the new season. The thing that I don't understand at this moment is with the new caretaker, the Verissimo, he started playing as a 4-3-3 system in a 4-3-3 system, and then changed that into a 4-4-2. What was the reason for that change of formation?
I would say that it's because it was to protect the back line, because we used to just have Julian Weigl as the single defensive midfielder in front of the back line, but we were getting exposed too often. So now we play a 4-4-2 with the double pivot to try to cover the back line a little bit more, either with Maite in there or Paulo Bernardo, a young guy.
Yeah, but still it seems quite attacking minded, because they play with a right right winger and left winger, we with Everton and Rafa Silva, and with two strikers, like more of a attacking four, and then a double pivot, and then with four defenders. With the right back we already mentioned, Lazaro is more of an attacker. So it's quite difficult to manage this this starting 11. But from what I could see is they are really vulnerable at the back, as you mentioned, especially in transition. So if they try to attack in transition, I think for Ajax that's the best option to be dangerous against Benfica.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. If you guys give us the ball and sit back, you're going to hurt us because our right backs, like I said, are often wingers. I mean, Andre Almeida is a guy who's sort of become sort of a figure of fun amongst the Benfica supporters because he's a former central midfielder. Then he played center back and then he played right back. And it's been in a position, like I said, that we've been dying to get a new right back because whoever we've had in there, either they don't have the defensive ability or they're incredibly slow. So like you said, if you hit us in transition with diagonal balls that, you know, our center backs are going to have a difficulty sort of keeping up with, I think that you'll really, really hurt us with pace down that wing.
I want to throw in a question of a fan, and I want to change it a little bit as well to both of you. So we have a question from actually two people, Nico and Cisco. They're asking for the strength and weaknesses of Benfica. We covered that a little bit, but I want to add to that. If we play 4-4-2, right? If you guys play 4-4-2, right? I thought, or we were thinking that maybe this is more compatible for the attackers, but as you mentioned, this is more to suit the defensive liability that you guys had. But at the same time, you mentioned that with Jorge Jesus, the three at the back defensively was better. So why is Verissimo making that switch? I still am a bit confused about that. You understand my question?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm confused by it as well. I thought that if your team is struggling with the things that we just said, then the back three makes a lot more sense because you play with the wing backs and it gives them a little more license to go forward and not have to worry as much about their defensive abilities, because the central midfielders would do a good job of sort of covering that flank when they would go forward, you know? So I don't understand it. I think that a lot of Benfiquistas would like to see him bring that back, the back three, the 3-4-3, because it suited us. It just felt more balanced overall. We had the defensive solidity without giving up the attack. And we were really good at playing on the counter with Darwin Nunez and Rafa and their pace. And then Yaremchuk through the middle, or whoever, Seferovic, whatever. I think Seferovic is out for a while though. Whereas the 4-4-2, like Sabi said, it lacks balance. It's either all in attack or all in defense. And we get hurt really, really badly when we're all in attack. And then teams like a Gil Vicente, who recently exposed us, they hit us in transition. And it was just like 2-3 passes. They're down the other end of the pitch and they're scoring goals. So I would like to know as well why Verissimo isn't going with the 3-4-3.
How did Verissimo play when he was the coach of Benfica B, the second team? Because he was the coach of that team before he took over the first team in the last month. Maybe he was already playing the 4-4-2 system or the 4-3-3, and he feels confident with that system and try to implement that more in the first team.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that that's exactly what he did last time. He was the caretaker manager as well when Bruno Lage got fired. I think that he's just more comfortable with the back four. And I think that it's something that, you know, he tried to sort of replicate the sort of thing that Bruno Lage was doing. It's a 4-4-2, but it's almost like a 4-1-3-2 in a sense, is because there's one holding midfielder. And then sometimes whether it's a João Mario or a Paulo Bernardo, they play slightly ahead of the Julian Weigl, for example. So I think he's just more comfortable with the back four, and he's not really willing to try out the back three. Maybe, you know, I don't know if Rui Costa, the president, said like, look, you gotta go with the back four. We got to get back to basics. Something maybe the players complained about the back three system. I don't know, but we at least had that defensive solidity with the back three, and felt like we could sort of grind out results more by playing defensively and then hitting on the counter and trying to steal a goal.
Is there a chance that you guys will go back to that system, or you think he will just stick to this until the end of the season?
I would not put any money on him switching to a back three. I think if results really start to go down the drain, then maybe he'll sort of feel like he has to try that to sort of fix things. But as of now, I think that I would be surprised if he switched to a back three against Ajax. I would be very surprised.
All right. We have a question coming in because we're talking about the liability of Benfica. Let's switch it around for a bit. somebody is asking, Cisco on Twitter asked us, so which are the players we should look out for, from Ajax perspective? So who are the dangerous players in your view? I will ask it to both of you, actually. Adrian, you go first.
Yeah, I think that one of them is very obvious in Darwin Núñez. He's sort of been one of our saviors as far as scoring crucial goals for us. Again, I'll point you back to that game against Barcelona, just because I'm sure that's probably what most people saw. He's very, very fast. His finishing sometimes goes missing, but for the most part, it's there. He's very, very quick in the dribble. He loves running into space, but he's not very good at dribbling. Like if you were to double up on him and put two defenders on him, he's not the best dribbler in tight spaces. But when he's running at you with the ball, he's very, very good at dribbling. Sometimes his control is not great. Sometimes his passing is a little bit off, but he is probably our biggest threat as far as our attack. And another one to watch out for, I don't know if he'll get much playing time. I don't know if Verissimo is going to go with Yaremchuk or Gonzalo Ramos, but Gonzalo Ramos is considered like the next big thing at Benfica. Good young striker, very, very good in the finish, scores a ton of goals for the B team, for the Portuguese under 20s or something like that. Very young player, fox in the box. He doesn't offer a lot in the dribble or anything, but he's just a supreme finisher. And if he does get some playing time and he does get the right service, he can absolutely be a threat. But aside from that, I don't know. Not that he's a threat to you guys, but Julian Weigl, typically, I'm really looking forward to his sort of battle with, I assume it will be Alvarez or someone in the midfield, but I'm looking forward to the sort of what Weigl can do in the midfield against you guys as well.
Yep. Sahbi, anything to add to that?
Yeah. Well, he already mentioned some players that I found quite dangerous. But what I'm happy about is the fact that João Mario is not playing lately. He's considered one of the dangerous players in midfield who can open up spaces for attackers, from what I've seen in the past. So he's considered for me a dangerous player, but I don't know whether he will play, because he got benched, I think, the last couple of games since Bernardo and I think Weigl are the starters for Verissimo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a player that I wish was getting more playing time, because it was working so well in that 3-4-3 system alongside Weigl, because João Mario had the freedom to sort of roam and, like you said, unlock our attackers with whether it's through his dribbling or through his passing ability. So I'm sad to not see him out there. Paulo Bernardo is a young player with a lot of promise, yes, but we need that class in the midfield, and I wish that João Mario was in there. And I guess you could also say, just as a side note, that Rafa could be considered dangerous, but he's so hit or miss with his consistency that it's hard to say. And his final ball is sometimes not there. Other times he scores a screamer. So it's hard to say whether he'll be a threat or not.
Yeah. And we should not forget, of course, Grimaldo. I think he's a terrific left back. But I think he was way better when Benfica played in a 3-4-3 system. It gave him the freedom to attack without looking too much at the back, because with the three defenders, they obviously took over the defensive role from Grimaldo, in which he excelled in attack. But as a left back now, at this moment, with a 4-man defense, I don't know whether he's capable of putting that all over again, just as he did some months ago.
Yeah. No, it's definitely difficult for him when Benfica's on the back foot and they're forced to defend a lot. Then that's when you see the worst sort of characteristics of Grimaldo, which is the defending. But like you said, the wing back role, he's made for that because he has a great left foot. Yeah.
So Grimaldo will be facing Anthony most probably. That will be amazing. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to the last part of the video. And I want you guys to come up with what you guys expecting from the game in general, the clash between Ajax and Benfica. What are you guys' predictions? And I'm also throwing one question from somebody from Twitter, Fonel. Where do you see, that's for you, Adrian, where do you see opportunities or chances for Benfica to advance? So take it away.
I think that it's sort of a dreamland sort of answer, but if Benfica switched to the 3-4-3 and they gave the ball to Ajax and sort of sat back and hoped that whether it's Darwin Núñez or Rafa or the combination of the two get opportunities on the counter and transition, then I think that is sort of our only hope. But if we are meant to sort of drive the game and be in the driving seat and sort of go.
You sound
What's
so
that?
excited, man, answering this question.
Honestly, it's definitely, it's a hard time being a Benfica supporter. There's not much to be excited about when you watch these games week in, week out. It's very, very dreary. There's not much of an identity in the team. There's not much. It's just sort of, you put out a 4-4-2 and okay, guys, go ahead, do your best type of thing. Like, it's hard to identify what our game plan is. So if we were to sit back in a 3-4-3 and try and beat you guys by attacking in transition with Darwin and Rafa, maybe we'd have a chance. But other than that, it's really difficult to see how we will do, because every other team that we've come up against that's decent has beaten us in Portugal or in the Champions League, like Bayern, for example. But Bayern, I mean, come on, it's one of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Abi, what do you think? What do you think our chances are? Benfica's chances and our chances?
Well, I expect an Ajax with a lot of possession and with very high pressure against their defense. So I think the tactics of Benfica will be that they will wait and try to find the moments to counterattack, and they will see their moments when they can create chances from set pieces. Because from a technical perspective, from a football possession perspective, Ajax will dominate, as they always do. I think we will have a 65% ball possession at least. And yeah, it's a matter of trying to not fall for their trap, not to get into their counterattack, because that was obviously one of our weak spots in the past. But if we look at it right now, we are so good at this moment. So that's probably the weakest for Ajax as well, to not being overconfident when we play against Benfica.
You know what? I mean, the first game we played in the Champions League, right? Probably you guys know this, of course. We played against Sporting, and we thought Sporting would sit back as well, but they tried actually to match us in playing football, and there were so many spaces for us to play, and we basically just, punished them very quickly. Do you think that Benfica will learn from this? And I have a second question, which is more towards the fans that will be in the stadium. Would be there a moment you think, like, if it doesn't go Benfica's way, that the fans will turn against Benfica? What do you think about that?
We've seen that already, in the fans whistling the team when they're losing 1-0 at home against a team we should be beating. So there's absolutely a possibility of that happening. There's just because, like I said, there's not much to be excited about right now. It's all frustration with the club, how it's run, who's in charge, how we're playing. There's not many things to be excited about. But as far as looking at what you guys did to Sporting twice and seeing if we can learn from that, I would like to hope that we would. And maybe that's why Verissimo was thinking, okay, let's play with this back four, because I think that Sporting both times, I mean, I know them well. They typically play a 3-4-3 and it didn't work for them. So maybe, hopefully they learned from that and they're going to try and just stick with this 4-4-2 or the 4-3-3. I would imagine, if I had to bet, it will be a 4-4-2 with the double pivot of Weigl and Maite. Yeah. That's what I think, because I don't know what's going on with João Mario at the moment. But will they learn from it? And will they be able to actually execute on what they learned from it? Is a whole other question entirely. That, again, I'm sorry to sound so negative, but there's just not many reasons to believe that they'll be capable of doing that, especially when you look at it in the face of what Ajax, has been doing recently.
I mean, the 4-4-2 system, which Benfica currently plays, what I predict is they will fall back. They will play in their own half and try to counterattack with their fast wingers. You got Everton, you got Rafa Silva on both sides. They will try to use their speed to counterattack with an excellent striker, Darwin, who is really target man, knows how to finish chances. So I think my bet is that they will try to play in that way.
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Look, I just want to say that in 18-19, when we played you guys, coming back very quickly, my observation, I thought you guys were very disciplined, very well organized as a team. I thought probably we had more difficulties playing you guys than playing Bayern. It might sound very strange, but it felt like that watching the games. I need a score prediction to end this podcast. So, Sahbi, you first, Adrian, for the first leg. I'm not asking you for the second one, just the first one next week.
Yeah.
So, Sahbi, you take it first.
Well, I'm quite positive. I mean, I just talked about not being overconfident, but I'm still saying it will be 0-2.
And I'm going to go with I'm going to go with 4-1 Ajax, just because
You're going to get
if
so
Santa
much
Clara
hate
can,
from the Benfica fans, man. Seriously.
well, I mean, look, what you guys did to Sporting in their stadium and how we have failed against Sporting recently, how we have failed against teams like Santa Clara, losing to Gil Vicente, things like that. It's just, there's no reason to believe that there'll be any other outcome. So yeah, I'm going to say 4-1 to Ajax for that first leg, I think.